Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, hello, hello. And welcome our guest, Mr. Tony Moreno, candidate for Pittsburgh City Mayor. Um, and Mr. Moreno, thank you
Hello.
so much for joining us and visiting us this evening. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions while we are conversating with Mr. Moreno, please put them in the please write them, and the team will make sure that Mr. Moreno gets. I will ask the questions, but if we run out of time, my team will make sure that Mr. Moreno gets your questions and he will be able to answer them afterwards. So
And I
please
will.
put all your questions in. Make sure you put down all your questions. So, hello, Mr. Moreno. Hello, how are you?
Any better, I'd be in heaven. And please, it's Tony.
Okay.
I know I'm in my mid 50s, unbelievably, but Mister's kind of hard to take right now. So Tony's
Okay.
fine.
I
I
respect that.
appreciate it.
I respect that, Tony. I
Thank you
respect
for
that.
having
Well,
me on. I appreciate it very much for inviting me to be a part of this forum.
yes, absolutely. That's what you and I was talking earlier. The last time that you had ran, what had happened, there was an event that you had to attend, and that's what had happened. It was like our dates had crossed, so that's why the
Yeah.
last time you wasn't on. So now that we have you, tell us, Tony, a little bit about yourself. Why are you running for mayor of the city of Pittsburgh?
Well, first, I am originally from Southern California. Uh, I am Mexican and Scottish, Irish, and Scandinavian. My mom is Scottish and Scandinavian, and my dad's Native American and Mexican. So that's where I grew up. I joined the Army after graduating high school. I became a United States Army combat paratrooper. I am very proud of that. It's one of the greatest accomplishments I've been a part of, is throwing myself out of an airplane. But it was it was quite it changed my life. It really did. Uh,
Yeah.
I I then served for 5 years. I got out of the army and I had met a woman from the area in Youngstown. I got married and I wanted to be a police officer. So I came to the big city and here I
Hmm.
am. And uh, my ex-wife decided she wanted to go do something else. And I found somebody that was uh, ready to run it out with me. So here I am in Pittsburgh. I spent 24 years as a Pittsburgh police officer. I was a police detective. I was in narcotics. I was really good at what I did. I arrested the most people. I made the most arrests in the city of Pittsburgh, but I had less than 1% of a complaint ratio to arrest. So what
Hmm.
that basically meant was I was doing my job correctly. You know,
Okay.
you don't get away from complaints, but they're going to come. But for as much work as I was doing it as correctly as I could. And that plays out to even today on the street. I run into people all the time that I encountered during my career as a law enforcement officer, and it's always been pleasant. So I'm blessed that way. So I retired, and I started finding myself trying to figure out why the problems were still happening even though I did everything that they told me to do. I was a
Hmm.
believer. You know, this is what we do. We enforce the law. There's people out committing crimes. Uh, there's people that need help. You give them help. Yeah, I was just doing what was structurally put before me that were supposed to
Hmm.
cure the problems that we saw out in our communities. Well,
Hmm.
that didn't happen. So I started really looking at what was going on, and I realized it's the politics of the day in our city.
Hmm.
How the politicians conduct themselves and how they push out policies are really the cause and effect of what I was seeing. And so you get back deeper into it and you try to figure out, okay, how do you fix that? Because what they told me didn't fix it. And it just comes from the top. When you're dealing with local issues, it's the top of the food chain that fixes these problems. And that goes to the mayor down through council and the other elected officials to make sure that they're putting the policies forth, that the people that are supposed to be utilizing those tools that they give us to enforce the policies, that they're conducting themselves in the right manner, and that there's transparency and accountability. We got to know where our money's being spent. We got to know who you're selecting to be our leaders. We got to know why we're looking at things. And you keep saying to us that they need changed and we need money for it. And we're going to do this for you. And those things never happen.
But
And
we,
that's what drove me to watch the process. I was never political.
mhm.
I think it's important for me to share that because of the way I came into this politically. I'm just a father, I'm a grandfather, I'm a husband, I'm a son, uh, I'm I'm a friend, I'm a brother. Uh, I'm not political. I didn't live my life that way. I live my life just like every other person does. I coached my kids' baseball games, my daughter's softball games, took her to cheerleading practice and dance practice and church. And we just lived life. We didn't talk about politics, it wasn't a part of it. It only
So
became a part of my life when I realized if I'm going to be here in Pittsburgh, that's the only way to get into it and fix it is find those issues that are messed up and maybe they've been polluted or people have been conditioned to act a certain way. But from an outside point of view, it was easy for me to see these things. But boy, was it hard to get involved in politics because if you're not invited, then they shut you out. But if you force your way in, they hide everything from you. They don't allow you to get the things, or they don't allow you to be a part of what's going on until they test you. And you have to pass their tests and you have to do what they say. And it became very, very immediately recognizable that this is why it's broken. We don't have people who are professionals or who have knowledge or even know how to govern running our lives in this world that we live in. So I I guess what I'm going to is why was I a Democrat? And then why did I switch to Republican? Well, I was a Democrat because I was a union member. And being involved in the unions, you realize those politicians count how many members are registered to vote. And if they're registered your way, then you are going to get more attention. So, of course, the union says, hey, you got to be a vote Democrat because they count those votes or else we don't matter. So you put it in Democrat and you just go about your business. Well, fast forward 24 years. First of all, I was tired of the Democrat. I was tired of political people knocking at my door around election time and primary time. They're always knocking. Hey, we want your signature. We want your signature. But now I realize why that's important.
because you took that was great to say, well, now you understand. You understand now. But listen,
Yeah.
let
Well,
me ask
that's.
you this.
Oh,
What
go
do
ahead.
you think? What do you think about the do you support the inclusionary zoning for major developments projects here in
No,
Pittsburgh?
I do not see where inclusionary zoning or area median income is the right
Mhm.
way to go about putting housing together for people that need housing. What I've witnessed is hundreds of millions of dollars go through the URA, focused to these selected areas with these selected developers. I know the developers don't like it because there's 3 federal lawsuits against AMI and inclusionary zoning in Pittsburgh right now. And across the nation, they have all been proved to be unconstitutional because it strangles the ability for people that want to build to come into areas and build towards those communities. So when you talk about AMI is not for the community in Homewood, AMI is across the county. So there's all kinds of gaps that happen, and that's where the real control comes in.
So
The individuals running
what
those
would be your
zones.
plan? I'm sorry,
My
I didn't mean to
plan
cut
would
you
be
off.
to take that money, go in and target the areas that need the housing the worst first. Come in and do the studies in that neighborhood. What's the average income for the people that are currently living here? And build homes and apartment complexes towards those groups of people for their neighborhood. That's going to be way different than they're developing out in Point Breeze. So you can't have the same standard there because people aren't getting the equal amount of housing that somebody else would because the rules apply differently. So
Hmm.
we got to take that away and stop looking at it through the prism of it's got to go through the politicians' hands and then get structured around this numbers game that keeps housing away from people instead of inviting them in. It's already been proven. They've been doing this and they're still losing population. So it's not working. We need to change it to get it to a place where the money gets back into the community's hands and we build housing for the people that need it in those specific communities.
So are you saying that not all neighborhoods should have affordable housing? Just or are you saying specific areas in Pittsburgh should just have
No,
affordable?
I'm not saying neighborhoods shouldn't have affordable housing. I'm saying the way they structured it is wrong. They've
Okay.
structured it to control the money and the development because they're in control of it in total because of these things. And they make those rules. When I say they, I mean the current elected officials, all of them across the board. They make these rules
All
and
right,
then they
let's
come
let's
back and
we
tell
gonna
us we have a housing
let's stick to
shortage.
you, Tony. Tony, we had this conversation. Let's stick to what Tony's
Oh,
gonna
I'm
do.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I
let's stick to what.
apologize.
Yeah, because they're
So
not here to
these
defend
rules are
themselves.
in place. These rules are in place now, and they're not working, and they've been in place. And they said they didn't have the money, but now we have the money, and we're still struggling to get this done. And it's just proven that we have to change what we're doing to get those houses and those apartments and those places built so people could start moving in here. And once you unleash those things out of the URA, because the URA is holding on to properties and it drives
Yeah.
the cost up.
Okay. So let me ask you this then. Do you agree with the region's the largest nonprofits, and do they need to pay their fair share of taxes?
Oh,
Or
yeah, there's an issue there, and I'm going to tell you, not too many people report on these things, but that is already in place. If you look at St. Margaret's over in Fox Chapel, St. Margaret's Hospital's UPMC, and the city of Pittsburgh owns that property. So one day, last time I ran for mayor, I was looking at the budget, and there's one line item, and it says nonprofit payment for service. And I went to Michael Lamb and I said, "Hey, Mike, what is this $480,000 for here?" And he didn't know where it came from. I said, "It's from your budget." And he said, "Oh, that's St. Margaret's." And I looked at him and I went, so there's already a matrix or a format set in place for a city owned property that
Hmm.
has a nonprofit on it to pay their fair share of taxes. And he says, well, apparently. I said, why hasn't this been spread out across the city? Because this is the problems we're talking about. So my idea, and I think it'll work, and I'll tell you why what's not working now is trying to force them to pay because those universities and those nonprofits look at what the city they watch what the city does with their money. So
But the
when they take those
UPMC
monies and
owns most of the properties here in Pittsburgh, right?
oh yeah, well this is what I'm getting at.
Okay.
They already have it set up to be done. Why aren't they doing it just because? Well, because they know that that money's just going to get squandered. That money just goes away. It disappears like this ARPA money. So my idea is put all those nonprofit properties into the same matrix and get a number out of it. And I think it's going to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, they're not going to say we're going to pay all that. So, what I say is we come in, and now I know the city's self insured, but they also pay about in the area of 36 to 40 million dollars for the entire city's medical health coverage. Now the unions are different, the city people are different, just the non-union people, but paid city employees across the board have these university hospitals pay for city employees health care. That does two things: it frees up the city employee from that burden, and it also brings people wanting to come in and work for the city, and it doesn't keep them out because we have the finest healthcare here. So if they put the minimum coverage here and it doesn't cost the city employee anything, if they want the bonus coverage, the big top dog coverage, they could pay more for it. But now everybody has coverage, and that's only about $40 million. Now there's much more dollars that could be had. So what do we want to do with that money? We
Mm.
want to go in there, take a portion of whatever hundreds of millions we negotiate out of and make housing and training centers the crux here. So if you want to be a part of growing this community, you're going to put UPMC Training Center for Health or for Child Care. So we could pick a spot. I'll use Homewood because that's the biggest area we have as problems. Pick a building. We'll take our youth who are being trained in the Allegheny Health Network Carpentry School and the whatever healthcare plumbing school, and put them towards some elite, all these depleted homes. Either they could tear them down if they're not good enough, or we're going to build them back. We get 84 Lumber to donate the wood, the lumber to build these homes, or get a local brick company to donate, or at least at cost, give us these things so we could put our community members who we've trained to work on building these houses. Now that's a dual part. They get what they want, we get what we want, and now people start getting houses, and we don't have to rely on developers. We're doing this ourselves in our own communities, training with the service that we get from these hospitals and nonprofits being a part of it, and we're not stealing the money. I know that I can bring all four of the big players to the table with that prospect.
So okay, so that was wait. I was ready to say hold on because I want to ask you all the questions. I want to make sure that the audience hears your answers and everything.
Okay.
So we only have like 15 more minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So and I want to make sure that we get at least most of them and get some audience questions, and also make sure that the audience gets your
I'll shorten it down, I promise. But that was a big one. That's not an easy one. But I'm the only one that has that plan. Nobody else is planning on that, and I've been doing that for 4 years.
Okay, thank you for that. Let me ask you this: what if you were elected mayor? What would be your vision for community development in neighborhoods that have not seen positive development? Specifically, I'm speaking of Sheridan, of course, but Perry Hilltop, Homewood, like development. What would be your vision for something like that in the communities that development has just not been happening?
Well, we could immediately go to the blighted properties. In the budget, there is right now $2 million to tear down blighted properties, and they don't do it. You can ask them why, but I know because I know one of the contractors who comes in, and they're professionals. They're certified in all kinds of stuff to tear it down. They have a plan where they could tear down 50 properties a week. So it can be done, and then go in and find with the communities, not what I think. I don't know what goes on in Sheridan. I don't know what goes on over there in Elliott. I got to come to you. I come to you and say, hey, take me to the places where you see development so we could target these and not let that money get thrown out there for anybody to take a bite of, but directly, immediately at those areas. Maybe there's some contractors in your community that can do some of that work. But there's a workforce there waiting to be used because there's people that need jobs. So that's the main issue, is get into those neighborhoods, start building them up with the community involvement, because that's really what it's all about. It's not government telling you, it's you telling us.
Okay, thank you for that. And I want to comment real quick. What you had stated that Homewood is like a little bad. What did you mean by? Because Homewood haven't had a murder in 2 years. So what did you mean?
They also haven't built a row of houses that people can afford to live in either.
Okay, that's what I was hoping you were talking about. Okay, that's what I
they seem to have abused Homewood, because when you look up there at that Bakery Square, they call that Larimer. Well, that's not the Larimer I walked down through. Who are you trying to kid? You're not helping the people that need help the most. And that's what I'm saying, is to go into the communities, and not just out where we think this development should happen, into the neighborhoods with the neighbors, so they could tell us, look at this park, it could be nicer. See this building, it used to be a pharmacy. And restructure that and get those folks in there, get businesses back going, and that'll start. Everything's economic, Terry. All the problems we have are all economic based. If we could build up the economies and get people in these communities jobs, schools will get better, houses will be built, people will start renting where they can afford. It will all get better once the economic factor becomes positive for those communities.
Thank you for that. This one's a doozy. Okay, this one's gonna be like the taxes on the the largest
Nonprofits.
nonprofits. Yes. So for 20 years, hundreds of millions of dollars of Pittsburgh public school local tax revenue has been diverted to the city of Pittsburgh. State legislatures moved money from Pittsburgh schools to the city when the city was in financial distress. The city is no longer in financial distress, yet in 2025, 25 million local earned income tax dollars will go to the city of Pittsburgh students. Instead of, I'm sorry, tax dollars instead of Pittsburgh students. I am sorry. Pittsburgh
No,
Public
that's right. I
Schools
get it.
is now, okay, Pittsburgh Public Schools is now facing a budget deficit and are planning to close and consolidate our neighborhood schools. If elected, would you put pressure on state legislature to reverse the earned income tax diversion back to Pittsburgh Public Schools and explain? And if so, and explain, please. And if not, explain, please.
Well, I first have to, I would have to get in and see what the terms of that, how they were laid out, because the city right now, they just move money from everywhere and every place,
We
and
passing
it
the Toady.
disappears, and
We're
we
gonna
don't
keep
know what
this on
happens to it.
Toady. Toady, we're gonna keep this on Toady.
Oh,
Toady.
well, well, you're asking me what I would do and why.
Yes, what would
So
you
if
do?
what I would do is I would go in and figure out what the terms of this was, and then find out why they didn't give it back. But
Mhm,
really, what we need to do is let the school district be the school district right now, and we got to take care of our house in the city of Pittsburgh. Once we could start building on families coming back to Pittsburgh and bringing their children to go to our schools, then
mhm,
we could start talking about, hey, we need to use any monies a little bit better, because the condition that our neighborhoods are in are not conducive to bringing people into Pittsburgh and live. And that's what the blight, the safety, the how they're building. They don't have the housing market that we need. That's unhealthy. So we have to make that healthy before we can even begin as a city to look at the schools. The schools have to look internally and say, hey, we're getting a lot of money here, but we're not producing, we're losing, and we're losing all these buildings. And we have to stop selling our property. We have to stop selling our wealth. And that lies within all the properties in the city of Pittsburgh. So I don't like that it happened, or why
mhm.
that it did happen, but I have to go in and figure out the why. And once I do that, I'll be able to focus on it. And that's what I'm good at, finding out the why. But right now, that's not part of what I'm focusing on that needs fixed the most.
I respect that. I respect that. Thank you so much for your answer, because I really respect that. That like what I heard was you want to make sure that you have all the facts, the I's dotted, T's crossed. You understand exactly what is going on, and I respect that. You tapped in before we go, I mean before we wrap it up a little bit. You tapped in a little bit. You spoke about your career as a police officer, um, and so tell us your thoughts and ideas of what Tony would do as mayor around public safety and lowering
Well,
crime.
I will tell you, my number one focus is going to be on the mental health epidemic. Back when I was policing, uh, we knew that it was the biggest problem we were facing was the mental health issues, because they were coming hot and heavy into the city. This is where the resources are, but there wasn't any real training on how to deal with them. Well, the city of Pittsburgh brought in crisis intervention team training. I know it well because my wife used to teach it across the county, but through the city of Pittsburgh Police Department. So I know that those things aren't being enforced. If we can get our police officers to start enforcing the training that we have,
Mm-hmm,
for instance, I used to teach de-escalation in this course for the last 2 years of its existence. And the first step in de-escalation is officer presence. We
mm-hmm,
have to just be there, but we don't be there and come bullying in. We're there to make sure that the people that need the help, and if it's mental health issues, that we can recognize it and not just think that 1,000-yard stare is because that person's going to attack me. It's because
mm-hmm,
they're going through a mental break. There's so many issues that relate to the mental health issues. if we can address them, we'll never make them better. That's not our
Mm,
job. We're not the social worker. But for the
mhm,
law enforcement officer to recognize those issues, it immediately changes the whole context of it. So
mm.
if we can get our police officers to act that way and then put on a customer service, they need customer service. And I'm going to tell you, the Civilian Review Board's number one complaint at 94% total is how they were treated by the officer. And the officer needs a lot of help because they are so stressed. The amount of trauma that the everyday police officer in the city of Pittsburgh's experience is overwhelming, and there's no officer wellness put forward to try to teach the officer, look, your number one PTSD signal is irritants. Everything irritates you because you got so much stress around you. And the city doesn't, we don't have that for the officers. So if we can make our officers well, it'll help us see people and help them get well. And then we could start actually doing police work if needed.
Thank you for that. And so we're before we wrap it up for this evening, Tony, how can, if someone had questions that maybe I did not ask, or they wanted to go in even further with things that we did discuss, how can someone get in touch with you?
You can go to my Facebook page right now. It's Tony Moreno, or Pittsburgh's Tony Moreno, and everything that I'm doing goes through there. You can catch me on Messenger. Remember, it's Moreno, like Rita or Omar. I'm not like Dan Marino. I'm the Hispanic version. It's Moreno. But I have a website being built right now as we speak. It's going to be realsteelmayor.com. You can email me at realsteelmayor.com. Ask me anything you want. You can messenger me. I'll get back to you as fast as I can. I know I missed your and Angel's message one time, and I don't want to miss you guys again. So that's why it was important that I got back to you. But
Good,
yeah, just reach out, and if we need to have a conversation, I'll come to you and have it. If we need to do this again, if you want to FaceTime with me, I'll do whatever. I'm an open book. There's nothing that you won't know about me that I won't tell you.
good, good. Well, wait. So we do have, if elected, how will you ensure that Pittsburgh residents will have access to quality drinkable water and clean air?
I have a very good friend of mine who is an expert in water. As a matter of fact, he does it now. He has created a self serving water purification system that runs on solar power in a container, in one of those shipping containers. It's really magic what he's developed. But we just have to make sure that everybody's obeying the rules.
Mhm.
There's a different tinge on law enforcement. They're like the referees of life, and we need to make sure that they act correctly. But if we can go and make sure that our manufacturing districts are obeying the rules that are set by these different municipalities and the things that they need individually, then those things should work right. If not, we have to go in there and then we have to make them accountable. So clean waters is the biggest one. And I don't know why in the world nobody addresses that right now, because you can't eat more than 3 fish out of this river because it's so polluted. You
Yeah,
can't have
yeah,
a triathlon and swim in the river because of the fecal matter count that's in the water. They're not allowed to issue that permit. So
yeah.
if we immediately start directing towards those things and not waiting for another government entity to come in and do it, if I have to create something that's actionable that way in a community organization, then we'll do that to get those things working, and we'll train people to do it. But just focusing on it and making it happen is what needs to be done.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Tony, before we wrap up this evening, is there anything that you would like to say before we say good night for with Talk Time with Terri this evening?
Yeah, first I want to say thank you, Terry, so much. I appreciate it. I always am blessed when I get to talk to folks that don't know me, that just have a perception. And what you're going to find out, and here's what I want to tell everybody: this is out of love, doing this action. It's because I love my community, and I do not like how people are being treated by government. And there's only one way that I know how to do this, and that's get in a position to change it. And it just happens to be the political position. I don't like that. It doesn't fit well in my lifestyle. It doesn't fit well in how I like to live. It's not good for anybody, but someone has to do it. And I'm asking you to look at me as that someone. I don't look at these things through political lenses. It's through what's happening in a community and who's getting hurt and why aren't they getting the help. So I just want everybody to know I'm doing this so I could be there for you. I can be the one that comes into your neighborhood and changes what everybody thinks about politics. And it's not about D or R or red or blue. It's about the city of Pittsburgh and getting done what needs to be done. We shouldn't have to keep asking these questions over and over again. So I appreciate the time. I appreciate people listening. I appreciate the invites. And I love you, Pittsburgh. Thank you so much. Vote for me, Real Steel Mayor Tony Moreno, Mayor of Pittsburgh 2025.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. With that, that's a wrap with Talk Time with Terri. We will see you next time. I think it's next week. We will see you, Mr. Tony. Stay on for 1 minute. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.
God